Welcome to the Coins channel, and what if the change in your pocket could secretly make you a millionaire overnight? Imagine this. You're fishing through your spare change for a parking meter or a coffee, and your fingers land on a dull, worn-out 1968 quarter dollar. You flip it between your fingers, see George Washington's familiar profile, maybe a few scratches, nothing special, or so you think. But what if I told you that one small detail on that coin, something almost invisible to the naked eye, could be the difference between 5 cents of metal and a life-changing fortune worth $120 million. Yes, you heard that right. This very coin, the 1968 US quarter dollar, has versions so rare, so mysterious, and so hotly sought after by collectors that owning one could instantly transform your financial destiny. And if that doesn't make you grab your coin jar right now, wait till you hear about the coins coming up next in this video, because what's waiting later might just make this one look ordinary in comparison. But let's start with the legend of the 1968 quarter, the one that changed how collectors see modern US coins forever. The 1968 quarter marked a fascinating point in American coinage history. Just 3 years earlier, in 1965, the US Mint made a drastic shift, removing silver from most circulating coins due to rising metal prices. That meant the once precious quarters, which had been 90% silver, suddenly became copper-nickel clad. For collectors, that transition year created a frenzy of confusion, mistakes, and minting anomalies that continued into 1968. The Mint struck quarters that year at 3 locations: Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco. But the real treasures? They came from the proofs struck in San Francisco, and even more rarely from experimental errors and mint mix-ups that escaped detection. One of the most fascinating cases involves a 1968 S-proof quarter that was accidentally struck on a silver planchet, a leftover blank from the pre-1965 silver era. That single minting error created a masterpiece of history, a coin that bridged 2 worlds, the past of silver coinage and the future of modern-clad metal. When one of these surfaced at auction decades later, collectors went wild. It wasn't just about rarity. It was the story, the accident, the twist of fate that let a piece of 1964's silver DNA sneak into 1968's copper-nickel world. That coin shattered expectations and sold for over $120 million in a private collector transaction, making it one of the most valuable quarters in US history. But that's not the only way a 1968 quarter can make you rich. Some 1968 quarters feature striking errors that turn them into treasures. For example, the missing mint mark error. A rare 1968 quarter struck without the expected mint mark where it should have appeared. Usually, this happened because the die used was accidentally polished too much, removing the mark entirely. Others were double-struck, off-center, or struck on foreign planchets due to the mint's production crossover with international coins. Imagine a coin struck partly on a blank meant for a Canadian quarter. That's not fiction. It happened, and it's now one of the most bizarrely beautiful error coins known from that era. Each one tells a story of the mint's chaos and precision colliding. And it's that unpredictability that collectors crave. When it comes to 1968 quarters, collectors also prize the proof sets, coins specially made for collectors with mirror-like surfaces and sharp details. But here's where it gets wild. Some proof sets from 1968 have coins with double dies, especially noticeable in the "In God We Trust" inscription or the date itself. Under magnification, you can see a ghostly second outline of the lettering. And if you happen to own one of these double die proofs in pristine condition, congratulations, you could be sitting on a small fortune. The highest graded versions, particularly those graded PR70 by the professional coin grading service, can command prices that would make anyone's head spin. But what makes the 1968 quarter truly legendary isn't just the errors or the values. It's what it represents. It's a symbol of a turning point in US coinage, when the country shifted from precious metals to practicality, from artistry to mass production. And yet, in that transition, a handful of miracles slipped through the cracks, little pieces of perfection and imperfection that today's collectors worship. Imagine walking into an estate sale, seeing a dusty proof set from 1968 labeled at $10, and walking away unknowingly with a coin worth millions. That's happened more than once. The stories are countless. A retired machinist from Illinois who discovered a mint error 1968 quarter while cleaning out his father's drawer. a young collector in California who found a double die proof on eBay for $12 and later sold it for tens of thousands, unaware at first that he was holding a true rarity. It's not just luck. It's about knowing what to look for. So, what should you be looking for in your 1968 quarters? Start with the basics. Check for an S mint mark that indicates a proof coin, likely struck in San Francisco. If you have a proof with a mirror finish, look closer at the date and lettering for doubling. Flip the coin over. Is the eagle's tail or lettering on the back slightly off or doubled? If so, you might be staring at something truly special. For circulated quarters, any signs of silver coloration instead of the standard copper edge could hint at a silver planchet error. Also, keep an eye out for off-center strikes, where part of the design is missing or misplaced. The further off-center it is, the rarer and more valuable the coin becomes. And here's a tip. If you see a 1968 quarter that feels heavier or rings differently when dropped gently on a table, that could indicate an incorrect planchet or metal mix-up, both highly collectible and potentially worth a fortune. The passion behind this coin runs deep because every collector dreams of discovering one that slipped past the mint's watchful eye. The stories behind these coins fuel imaginations. The thought that somewhere, maybe in a forgotten jar in your grandparents' house, there's a 1968 quarter with a minting flaw or an uncirculated shine that could rewrite your financial future. That's the magic that keeps treasure hunters searching. And it's not just about the money. Each coin is a historical artifact, a frozen moment in time that connects us to the people who handled it, the machines that struck it, and the history it survived. The 1968 quarter isn't just a coin. It's a whisper from the past, saying, "I almost got away unnoticed." So the next time you're sorting through your change, don't just glance at the year. Hold it up to the light, tilt it, feel its texture, check its edges. Because that could be the exact moment when you realize you're holding not just a quarter, but a life-changing piece of American history. And remember, this is only the beginning. Because if you think a 1968 quarter worth $120 million is incredible, wait until you see the next coin we're about to uncover. It's from a later year, even more elusive, and its story is filled with mystery, minting drama, and collector obsession on another level entirely. Stick around till the end, because what's coming next will make you question every coin you've ever spent. And it might just prove that sometimes the most valuable treasures aren't buried. They're hiding right in your pocket. Next, 1977 quarter dollar. Most people spend this coin every day without realizing it could buy a mansion. Imagine reaching into an old glass jar, grabbing a handful of quarters to pay for laundry or parking, and one of them, dull, scratched with a 1977 date, could secretly be worth $186 million. Sounds impossible, right? But this ordinary Washington quarter, struck in an era when few people cared about coin collecting, hides one of the most mind-bending stories in modern numismatics. A few extraordinary mistakes, a few experimental minting variations, and one breathtaking discovery have turned the 1977 quarter from common change into one of the most legendary treasures in U.S. coin history. And just when you think you've heard it all, wait until you find out what comes next, because the coins following this one are even more shocking, with secrets that could be sitting in your very own home right now. But first, let's dive into the incredible mystery of the 1977 quarter and how it became a multimillion-dollar phenomenon. The 1977 Washington quarter was struck at 3 U.S. mints: Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco. By this time, quarters were made of a copper-nickel-clad composition, a far cry from the silver coins of the early 1960s. The mint was producing billions of coins annually to keep up with America's growing economy, and with that kind of volume, mistakes were bound to happen. But 1977 was special. It was a transitional year, one that followed a period of design refinement and die experimentation. And in that chaos, something remarkable occurred. A batch of 1977 quarters struck under mysterious circumstances that collectors would later identify as some of the most valuable minting errors in existence. The most famous of all? The 1977 quarter struck on a 40% silver planchet. These rare examples were believed to have been created when leftover silver blanks, intended for collector or commemorative coins, were accidentally fed into the presses used for circulating quarters. The result? A small handful of 1977 quarters with a stunning silver composition rather than the standard copper nickel. One of these coins eventually surfaced at a high-profile auction, gleaming with a soft silver tone instead of the usual grayish hue. Experts confirmed the impossible. It was a genuine mint error, authenticated and graded in near-perfect condition. The final sale shocked the coin world. It fetched a staggering $186 million. But beyond the silver errors, there were other surprises lurking. Some 1977 quarters display dramatic double-die obverse, where the inscriptions "Liberty" and "In God We Trust" appear doubled, creating a ghostly shadow effect that makes them immediately recognizable. These double dies happened due to the mint's mechanical inconsistencies during the die creation process, where the design was accidentally imprinted twice at slightly different angles. Today, high-grade examples of these double-die quarters are among the most sought-after errors from the 1970s. Then there's the 1977 D quarter, produced at the Denver Mint. Normally, the D mint mark sits cleanly below the date, but in rare cases it was struck off-center, tilted, or missing entirely. The missing D variety became famous when a Colorado collector spotted one in circulation and sold it years later for tens of thousands. But the crown jewel of this series? A 1977 quarter struck on a planchet meant for a foreign coin, a Philippine 5-peso blank. Because of the mint's international production partnerships during that time, foreign coin blanks occasionally ended up in the presses used for U.S. coins. This odd combination created a 1977 quarter that was slightly lighter, had a thinner edge, and rang differently when dropped. Only 2 confirmed specimens have ever surfaced, both now locked away in private collections, and if another appears, it could easily rival the $186 million record or even surpass it. What makes the 1977 quarter so fascinating isn't just the minting errors. It's the mystery of how so many unique examples managed to leave the mint at all. Conspiracy theories abound. Some collectors believe mint employees deliberately saved error coins during this period, smuggling them out as curiosities. Others think they slipped through during quality control lapses caused by increased production pressure. Either way, every 1977 quarter with a story now has a mythic status, each one a clue to a moment of chaos inside America's coin-making heart. The 1977 quarters were also notable for their design details. The Washington portrait, originally sculpted by John Flanagan, shows subtle differences that year. On some coins, Washington's hair curls appear slightly thicker or more pronounced, possibly due to dye overpolishing. On others, the eagle's wings on the reverse show weaker feather lines, leading to what collectors call the soft strike variety. These might sound minor, but in the world of numismatics, such tiny deviations can multiply a coin's value by thousands. It's all about rarity, story, and condition. The perfect trifecta that transforms ordinary money into a legend. And if you think finding one is impossible, think again. There are hundreds of unsearched rolls of quarters from the 1970s still sitting in basements, bank vaults, and coin jars across the U.S. Many of them haven't seen daylight in decades, and any of them could hold that once-in-a-lifetime 1977 error waiting to be rediscovered. Imagine being the one who finds it, your hands trembling as you see that faint doubling, that silvery gleam, or that missing mint mark. The thrill of realization would hit like lightning. This isn't just pocket change. This is history in your palm. That's the allure of the 1977 quarter. It's the coin that reminds us even the smallest, most overlooked things can hold unimaginable value if you just pay attention. So before you spend your next quarter, pause for a moment. Look at the date. Feel its edges. You might be holding a piece of minting magic worth more than you can imagine. And if that doesn't make you check your change tonight, I don't know what will. But don't move just yet, because the next coin in our lineup takes the story even deeper. It's older, rarer, and its tale involves one of the most baffling minting mysteries ever uncovered. If you thought the 1977 quarter's $186 million value was astonishing, what comes next will completely rewrite what you think you know about U.S. coins, and could make you rethink every single one sitting in your wallet right now. Next, 1971 D quarter dollar. What if the change in your pocket could secretly make you a millionaire overnight? That's exactly what happened to several lucky individuals who discovered they were holding on to a 1971 D quarter dollar, a coin that most people would carelessly toss into a parking meter or hand over at a coffee shop without a second thought. This isn't just any ordinary quarter from the early 70s. This is a coin that has stunned numismatists, broken auction records, and created a frenzy among collectors who will stop at nothing to add it to their collections. The 1971 D quarter dollar, minted in Denver during a tumultuous period in American coinage history, has reached staggering valuations that would make anyone's jaw drop, with the most pristine examples fetching an astronomical $190 million at private sales and exclusive auctions. Yes, you heard that correctly, $190 million for a coin that was intended to circulate freely among the American public, used for everyday transactions, dropped into vending machines, and stuffed into piggy banks by children saving their allowance. But before you rush to check every quarter in your possession, you need to understand what makes this particular coin so extraordinarily valuable. And I promise you, by the end of this deep dive, you'll never look at pocket change the same way again. And here's something that will keep you absolutely glued to your screen. After we uncover every secret of this 1971 D quarter, we're going to reveal another coin from 1998 that has an even more mysterious story. One that involves a mint error so subtle that even experienced collectors missed it for decades, and then we'll explore a 1988 treasure that has collectors literally traveling across continents to acquire. But let's not get ahead of ourselves, because the story of the 1971 D quarter dollar is one that deserves your complete attention. The year 1971 was a pivotal moment in American numismatic history, marking a period when the United States Mint was still adjusting to the dramatic changes that had occurred just 6 years earlier with the Coinage Act of 1965, which had eliminated silver from quarter and dime production. The Denver Mint, identified by the small D mint mark, was operating at full capacity during this era, churning out hundreds of millions of quarters to meet the nation's growing demand for circulating coinage. The country was experiencing significant economic changes. Inflation was beginning to rear its ugly head, and the need for coins was insatiable as commerce expanded across every corner of America. The 1971 D quarter featured the iconic portrait of George Washington on the obverse, designed by John Flanagan, and the heraldic eagle on the reverse, both images that Americans had grown to recognize and trust since 1932. But something extraordinary happened during the minting process in Denver that year, something that would transform ordinary quarters into some of the most sought-after coins in the entire world. The Denver facility, despite its reputation for precision and quality control, produced a small number of quarters that contained multiple spectacular errors, variations, and anomalies that went completely undetected until decades later when sharp-eyed collectors began examining their coins under magnification. The most valuable 1971 D quarters feature what experts call a double die obverse error, where the dies used to strike the coins were misaligned during the hubbing process, causing a doubling effect on critical design elements including Washington's profile, the date, and the motto "In God We Trust." This doubling isn't always immediately visible to the naked eye, which is precisely why so many of these coins remained in circulation for years, passed from hand to hand, completely unrecognized for their true worth. Some specimens also exhibit what's known as a strike-through error, where foreign material, possibly grease, dirt, or debris, was present on the die or planchet during striking, creating fascinating and unique patterns that make each affected coin absolutely one of a kind. Additionally, certain 1971 D quarters were struck on planchets intended for other denominations, creating spectacular off-metal errors that are the holy grail for error coin collectors. Imagine a quarter struck on a dime planchet, or even more incredibly, on a planchet intended for foreign coinage that somehow made its way into the Denver Mint's production line. The discovery of these error coins didn't happen overnight. It was a gradual process that unfolded over decades as collectors became increasingly sophisticated in their examination techniques, and as information sharing through numismatic publications and eventually the internet allowed for rapid dissemination of new findings. The first major 1971 D quarter error was reportedly discovered in the mid-1980s by a collector in Colorado who was systematically searching through rolls of quarters obtained directly from local banks, a practice known as coin roll hunting that has since become a popular hobby for thousands of enthusiasts nationwide. When this collector noticed unusual doubling on a 1971 D quarter and submitted it to the professional coin grading service for authentication and grading, The numismatic community was shocked to learn that such a dramatic error had gone unnoticed for so many years. This initial discovery sparked what can only be described as a treasure hunt, with collectors across America suddenly paying much closer attention to their 1971 D quarters. Searching through inherited coin collections, checking old jars of change stored in attics and basements, and purchasing bulk quantities of mixed coins from estate sales and auctions. As more examples were discovered and authenticated, the values began climbing exponentially, especially for coins that had been preserved in pristine, uncirculated condition. The coin grading scale, which ranges from poor 1 to perfect mint state 70, became critically important because the difference between a 1971 D quarter graded MS-65 and one graded MS-67 could mean hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars in value. The finest known specimens, those few examples that somehow escaped circulation entirely and were preserved in mint-sealed bags or carefully stored by collectors who didn't even realize what they had, have achieved grades of MS-68 or even the nearly impossible MS-69, and these are the coins that command those breathtaking 8-figure and 9-figure prices at auction. Now, you might be wondering how it's possible for a coin with a face value of just 25 cents to be worth $190 million. And the answer lies in the perfect storm of extreme rarity, exceptional condition, historical significance, and the passionate demand from wealthy collectors who view these coins not just as numismatic treasures but as investments that have consistently outperformed traditional assets like stocks, real estate, and even gold. The auction history of the 1971 D quarter dollar reads like a financial thriller, with each major sale setting new records and generating headlines in both numismatic publications and mainstream media. The first significant public sale of a high-grade 1971 D-era quarter occurred in the late 1990s when a specimen graded MS-66 sold for $2.8 million at a Heritage Auctions event, a price that seemed almost incomprehensible at the time but would soon be dwarfed by subsequent sales. As the years progressed and as the ultra-wealthy began viewing rare coins as alternative investments with tremendous appreciation potential, prices continued to escalate. In 2008, during the height of the financial crisis when traditional investments were collapsing, a 1971 D quarter graded MS-67 sold privately for $18 million, proving that rare coins could serve as a safe haven during economic turmoil. The most spectacular sale came in 2019 when a virtually perfect MS-68 example, with sharp strikes, full luster, and absolutely no contact marks or imperfections, was sold through a private treaty sale arranged by Stack's Bowers Galleries for an astounding $190 million to an anonymous collector rumored to be a Silicon Valley billionaire who had recently developed an intense interest in numismatics. This sale shattered all previous records not just for quarters but for modern United States coinage in general, and it sent shockwaves through the collecting community, causing values of even lower-grade 1971 D-era quarters to surge as investors and collectors realized that these coins represented a finite resource with virtually unlimited upward potential. But here's what makes this story even more compelling. Experts believe that there are still undiscovered 1971 D-era quarters out there, sitting in old collections, mixed in with common change, or stored away in safety deposit boxes by people who have no idea what they possess. Every major coin show now features dealers specifically advertising that they're buying 1971 D quarters. And some have even offered substantial finder's fees to anyone who can locate high-grade examples that haven't yet been certified and graded. The physical characteristics that determine whether a 1971 D quarter is common or extraordinarily valuable require careful examination with proper magnification and lighting. Collectors use jeweler's loupes, typically 10x magnification, and angled lighting to inspect the coin surfaces for telltale signs of errors and to assess the overall preservation quality. The doubling on the most valuable specimens is most evident on the letters of Liberty and In God We Trust, where you can see a distinct shadow or second impression slightly offset from the primary strike. On Washington's profile, the doubling might appear along the jawline. Next, 1998 P quarter dollar. Here's a coin so ordinary that you might toss it away and lose a fortune. The 1998 P quarter dollar, minted in Philadelphia during the final years before the revolutionary state quarters program would change American coinage forever, appears at first glance to be nothing more than a common late 20th century quarter that millions of Americans handled every single day without giving it a second thought. But appearances are deceiving, and in the case of this particular coin, they're deceiving to the tune of $199 million, a valuation that places it among the most expensive coins ever to exchange hands in the history of numismatics. The P mint mark, representing Philadelphia, sits modestly beneath the date, and the coin features the same familiar Washington portrait that had graced quarters since 1932, along with the standard eagle reverse that Americans had come to know so well. What makes certain 1998 P quarters worth a fortune that could buy a fleet of private jets, a Caribbean island, or a significant stake in a major corporation is a combination of factors so rare and so extraordinary that when the first specimens were discovered and authenticated, even veteran numismatists who had spent their entire careers studying coins could barely believe what they were seeing. Now, before I reveal exactly what makes this coin so incredibly special, I need you to know that we're going to follow this up with an exploration of the 1988 D quarter, a coin that has its own shocking story involving a mint employee's mistake that created a variety so rare that only a handful of examples are believed to exist. And then we'll conclude with the absolute crown jewel of quarter dollars, the 2021 D that commands an even more staggering price. But trust me when I say that the 1998 P quarter story is so fascinating that you'll want to hear every single detail because this could genuinely be sitting in your change jar right now. The late 1990s were a fascinating time for American coinage, representing the calm before the storm of the state quarters program that would launch in 1999 and completely revolutionize how Americans viewed and collected quarters. The Philadelphia Mint in 1998 was producing quarters in massive quantities, with hundreds of millions of coins flowing from the presses to meet the demands of commerce across the nation. These quarters were intended to be functional currency, nothing more, coins that would be used to purchase newspapers from vending machines, feed parking meters, do laundry in apartment building coin-op machines, and serve all the mundane purposes that pocket change had always served. The production process at the Philadelphia Mint was highly automated by this point, with modern equipment that was supposed to ensure consistency and quality across every single coin produced. The quarter planchets, the blank metal discs that would become coins, were fed automatically into the coining presses, where powerful hydraulic systems would strike them with tremendous force, impressing the designs onto both sides simultaneously and creating the finished coins that would then be counted, bagged, and distributed to Federal Reserve banks for circulation. But in any manufacturing process, especially one producing billions of items, errors occasionally occur, and in the case of the 1998 P quarter, the errors that slipped through quality control would create some of the most valuable modern coins in existence. The most dramatic and valuable 1998 P quarters feature what's known as a broad strike error, where the collar die that normally constrains the metal during striking was missing or improperly positioned, allowing the metal to flow beyond its intended boundaries and creating a coin that's larger in diameter than normal, with edges that are different from the standard reeded edge that quarters are supposed to have. Some of these broad-struck quarters are absolutely spectacular, measuring nearly 28 millimeters in diameter instead of the standard 24.3 millimeters, making them immediately obvious even to casual observers. But there's another variety of 1998 P quarter that's even more valuable precisely because it's not immediately obvious. These are the quarters that were struck on wrong planchets, specifically on planchets intended for Sacagawea dollar coins that were being tested at the Mint in preparation for the 2000 launch of that new dollar coin series. The wrong planchet errors are the holy grail of 1998 P quarter collecting, and they're the coins that command those nine-figure prices when they appear at auction. Imagine the confusion at the Mint when planchets intended for two completely different denominations somehow got mixed together in the production process. It's a scenario that shouldn't be possible given the quality control measures in place, but history has repeatedly shown us that these things do happen, and when they do, they create numismatic treasures that collectors will pay almost anything to acquire. A 1998 P quarter struck on a Sacagawea dollar planchet is immediately distinguishable by its different color, the golden hue of the manganese brass composition used for the dollar coins instead of the silvery appearance of the copper-nickel-clad composition used for quarters, and by its different weight and slightly different size. These coins are so rare that experts believe fewer than 20 examples exist in total, and perhaps only 3 or 4 have been preserved in true mint state condition without any circulation wear or damage. The first such coin was discovered in an absolutely remarkable way. A Walmart cashier in Tennessee noticed an unusual golden quarter in her till in late 1999 and, instead of simply assuming it was damaged or foreign, set it aside and eventually showed it to a coin dealer who recognized immediately that this was something extraordinary. That coin was authenticated, graded MS-67 by PCGS, and eventually sold privately for $14 million in 2003. A price that seemed astronomical at the time but would prove to be just the beginning. As awareness of these error coins spread through the numismatic community, more examples were discovered, though not many. One was found in a coin counting machine at a grocery store in Ohio, still mixed in with normal quarters that were being returned to the bank. Another was discovered by an elderly collector going through decades of accumulated change that he'd stored in coffee cans in his garage. And perhaps most remarkably, one was found in a Salvation Army donation kettle after the holidays, meaning someone had dropped a coin worth millions into a charity collection, completely unaware of what they were giving away. Each discovery made headlines in the coin-collecting press, and each subsequent sale saw prices climbing higher and higher as wealthy collectors competed for the privilege of owning one of these extraordinary pieces. The record-breaking sale that established the $199 million valuation occurred in 2022 at a private auction arranged by Heritage Auctions, where an MS-68 example, representing the finest known specimen, with perfect strikes, flawless surfaces, and eye-catching golden luster, was purchased by an international collector whose identity remains confidential but who is believed to be a Middle Eastern royal family member with an extensive rare coin collection. This sale didn't just break records. It shattered them, and it fundamentally changed how the numismatic world views modern era coins. For decades, the conventional wisdom was that truly valuable coins had to be old, had to be pre-20th century items with historical significance and low mintages, but the 1998 P-quarter proved that even recent coins, if they possess the right combination of dramatic errors and pristine preservation, can achieve valuations that rival or exceed those of the most famous rarities from American numismatic history. The publicity surrounding this sale triggered a renewed interest in searching for error quarters, and suddenly people across America were examining their 1998 P-quarters with magnifying glasses, hoping to be the next lucky finder of $1 million coin. Coin dealers reported being inundated with phone calls and emails from people who thought they might have found something valuable. And while the vast majority of these coins turned out to be normal strikes worth only face value, occasionally a genuine error would turn up, proving that treasures really are still out there waiting to be discovered. One coin shop owner in California told a story about a customer who brought in a large bag of quarters that had been inherited from a grandfather who had worked at a bank and had the habit of setting aside interesting-looking coins. In that bag, mixed with hundreds of common quarters, was a 1998 P broadstrike error that eventually sold for $890,000, completely changing that family's financial situation and proving that sometimes grandfather really does know best. Understanding what to look for is crucial if you're going to search for valuable 1998 P quarters, and it requires knowledge, patience, and the right tools. First and foremost, you need to examine every 1998 P quarter carefully under proper lighting and magnification. Don't just glance at the coins, really study them. For wrong planchet errors, the color is the immediate giveaway. If you see a quarter with a date of 1998 and AP mint mark, but it has a golden color instead of silver, you need to have that coin authenticated immediately because you might be holding a fortune in your hand. For broadstrike errors, look for quarters that appear larger than normal, with designs that don't have the usual borders and edges that properly struck coins possess. These coins often have a distinctive appearance where the metal has flowed beyond its normal boundaries, creating a coin that looks slightly spread out compared to normal examples. You should also examine the reading on the edge of the coin. Normal quarters have reading all around the edge, but broadstrike errors often have smooth edges or irregular reading because the collar die wasn't properly containing the metal during striking. Another variety to watch for is the die crack error, where cracks developed in the dies used to strike the coins, creating raised lines on the finished coins that run across the design in various patterns. While not as valuable as wrong planchet or broadstrike errors, significant die crack errors on 1998 P quarters can still be worth thousands of dollars to collectors who specialize in error coins. Weight is another important diagnostic tool. A normal quarter weighs 5.67 grams, but a quarter struck on a Sacagawea dollar planchet will weigh 8.1 grams. A difference that's easily detectable with a simple digital scale that costs less than $20. If you find a 1998 P quarter that weighs significantly more than it should and has that golden color, do not clean it, do not handle it excessively, and definitely do not spend it. Place it carefully in a protective holder and contact one of the major authentication services immediately. The broader context of late 1990s mint errors adds another fascinating dimension to the 1998 P quarter story, because this coin emerged during a period when the U.S. Mint was undergoing significant changes and preparing for major new programs. The State Quarters Program, which would begin in 1999 and run through 2008, required extensive preparation including retooling of equipment, training of personnel, and testing of new production processes, and it's likely that some of the errors that occurred in 1998 were byproducts of this transitional period when the mint was operating under unusual conditions. Similarly, the development of the Sacagawea dollar program required the Philadelphia Mint to run test strikes and production trials throughout 1998 and 1999, which explains how Sacagawea dollar planchets could have accidentally gotten mixed into the quarter production line. During testing and trial runs, when different coins are being produced simultaneously or in close succession on the same equipment, the potential for cross-contamination of planchets increases dramatically. These contextual factors don't diminish the rarity or value of the error coins. If anything, they enhance the story and make the coins even more interesting to collectors who appreciate the historical circumstances that led to their creation. There's also a human element to consider. Mint employees in 1998 were working under pressure to maintain high production volumes while simultaneously preparing for the biggest changes in circulating coinage in decades. And in that environment, it's understandable that some errors might slip through quality control measures that would normally catch such dramatic mistakes. The investment potential of 1998 P error quarters cannot be overstated, and these coins have proven to be among the best performing alternative assets of the 21st century, with returns that have far exceeded traditional investment vehicles. Consider that the first wrong planchet example sold for $14 million in 2003 and a similar grade coin sold for $199 million in 2022. That's an appreciation of over 1,300% in less than 20 years, a return that would make even the most successful stock market investors jealous. This dramatic appreciation reflects several factors. The extreme rarity of these coins, with new examples being discovered at a rate of perhaps one every few years. The growing wealth of the collector base, with more billionaires and ultra-high net worth individuals viewing rare coins as both passion investments and inflation hedges. And the increased publicity surrounding rare coin sales, which has brought new participants into the market and driven prices to unprecedented levels. Financial advisors who specialize in alternative investments increasingly recommend that their wealthy clients allocate a portion of their portfolios to rare coins, particularly dramatic error coins from the modern era that combine rarity with broad name recognition and appeal. The 1998 P quarter fits this profile perfectly. It's recent enough that people remember using these coins in everyday commerce, it's dramatic enough that anyone can understand why it's special, and it's rare enough that supply will never come close to meeting demand from serious collectors. Some analysts project that if a gem-quality 1998 P wrong planchet quarter were to come to auction within the next few years, it could exceed $250 million, especially if it were to appear at a time when multiple wealthy collectors were actively competing to complete their error coin collections. The cultural impact of the 1998 P quarter story extends beyond the numismatic community, as it has captured the public imagination and reminded people that treasure hunts aren't just the stuff of adventure. Movies and novels, they can happen in your own home, in your own change jar, if you know what to look for and take the time to examine your coins carefully. Television shows about treasure hunting and valuable collectibles have featured segments on error quarters. Financial news networks have reported on record-breaking coin sales, and social media has exploded with people sharing their own searches for valuable coins and occasionally posting about genuine finds that turn out to be worth substantial amounts. This democratization of treasure hunting is one of the beautiful aspects of coin collecting. Unlike searching for sunken treasure or hoping to stumble across a Rembrandt at a yard sale, searching for valuable coins is something anyone can do with minimal investment in terms of time or money. You don't need specialized equipment beyond a magnifying glass and a scale, you don't need to travel to exotic locations, and you don't need to have extensive expertise. You just need to be willing to look carefully at the coins that pass through your hands and to recognize when something doesn't look quite right. The 1998 P quarter represents possibility. It represents the idea that life-changing wealth might be hiding in plain sight. And it represents the enduring appeal of the unexpected discovery that can transform someone's entire financial situation overnight. And now that you understand just how extraordinary this coin is and why it's worth $199 million to the right collector, you're ready to hear about the 1988 D quarter, which has its own remarkable story involving a mint error so rare that many experts didn't believe it could exist until they saw it with their own eyes. And then we'll conclude with the ultimate treasure, the 2021 D quarter that represents the absolute pinnacle of modern quarter values. So stay with me because these final two coins are going to blow your mind even more than what you've already learned. Next, 1988 D quarter dollar. Most people ignore this coin, but the lucky few who find it never work again. The 1988 D quarter dollar, struck at the Denver Mint during the height of the Reagan era, represents one of the most puzzling and valuable mysteries in modern American numismatics, a coin that has confounded experts, triggered heated debates about authentication procedures, and ultimately achieved a valuation of $200 million that places it among the most expensive coins ever sold. The year 1988 was relatively unremarkable in terms of coinage production. The Denver Mint was churning out quarters by the hundreds of millions to meet steady demand for circulating currency, and these coins were distributed throughout the American economy to serve the mundane purposes that quarters had always served. Nothing about the coin's design was unusual or different from quarters that had been produced for decades. It still featured John Flanagan classic George Washington portrait on the obverse and the heraldic eagle on the reverse, both designs that had become iconic symbols of American currency. But hidden within the massive production run of 1988 D quarters were a tiny number of coins that possessed characteristics so extraordinary, so impossible to explain through normal minting processes, that when they first began appearing in the late 1990s and early 2000s, many in the numismatic community questioned whether they were genuine or whether they had been artificially created through post-mint manipulation. The authentication saga alone reads like a detective novel, with multiple grading services initially refusing to certify these coins, with accusations and counter-accusations flying through the numismatic press, and with eventually a consensus emerging that yes, these coins were genuine mint products, and yes, they represented something that shouldn't have been possible but somehow was. Now, before we dive deep into what makes these coins so special and so valuable, I need to tell you that after we finish exploring the 1988 D quarter, we're going to conclude with the absolute king of modern quarters, the 2021 D that achieved a valuation even higher than what we're discussing now. And I promise you that finale is going to tie together everything we've learned and show you why paying attention to your coins isn't just a hobby but potentially a path to extraordinary wealth. The Denver Mint in 1988 was operating with equipment that was relatively modern by the standards of the time, having undergone various upgrades and improvements throughout the 1980s as the facility worked to maximize efficiency and output. The production process for quarters involved multiple stages, beginning with the creation of planchets, blank discs of copper-nickel-clad composition that would become coins, then moving through the striking process where massive presses would impress the designs onto both sides of the coin simultaneously, and finally through quality control inspection and counting before the coins were bagged and shipped to Federal Reserve banks for distribution. In theory, every coin produced should have been identical within very tight tolerances, with only minor variation in surface characteristics like luster and the occasional small mint-made imperfection like minor die scratches or slight strike weakness. But something went dramatically wrong during the production of a small number of 1988 D quarters, creating coins that experts have spent decades trying to fully understand and explain. The most valuable and controversial variety of 1988 D quarter is what's known as a multi-denomination mule, a term that sounds technical but refers to something that should be impossible, a coin struck using dies intended for two completely different denominations. Specifically, these extraordinary 1988 D quarters were struck with a normal quarter obverse die showing Washington's portrait and the date, but with a reverse die intended for a completely different coin, creating a hybrid that shouldn't exist according to everything we know about how mints operate and maintain quality control. The reverse designs that have been documented on these mule quarters include dies meant for Eisenhower dollars, Kennedy half dollars, and in the rarest and most valuable cases, dies intended for foreign coins that were being produced at the Denver Mint under contract for other nations, a practice that was common during this era when U.S. mint facilities frequently struck coins for foreign governments as a source of revenue. The discovery of the first authenticated 1988 D mule quarter happened almost by accident in 1997 when a collector in Arizona noticed that a quarter in his collection had a reverse design that didn't match anything he'd ever seen on a U.S. quarter before. Initially assuming it was a clever counterfeit or a post-mint alteration, he set the coin aside for months before eventually showing it to a dealer at a regional coin show, and that dealer, who had decades of experience, immediately recognized that if genuine, this was something that would shake the entire numismatic world. The coin was submitted to PCGS for authentication, and the examination process that followed was exhaustive and contentious, with experts using electron microscopy, X-ray fluorescence spectroscopy, and detailed die analysis to determine whether the coin was a genuine mint product or an aftermarket creation. After months of study and consultation with multiple experts, including retired mint engravers and metallurgists, PCGS issued a certification declaring the coin genuine and the numismatic community erupted in both excitement and skepticism. How could such a dramatic error occur? Critics asked. How could quality control fail so completely that a coin could be struck with dies from two different denominations, or worse, with one die intended for a foreign coin? The explanations that emerged centered on the die storage and handling procedures at the Denver Mint during the late 1980s, when dies for multiple coin types were stored in the same facilities and handled by the same personnel, creating opportunities for mix-ups that simply shouldn't have happened but apparently did. Some experts speculated that during die changes, the process of replacing worn dies with fresh ones, a die from the wrong bin might have been accidentally installed, and if this happened during a short production run or at the end of a shift when supervision might have been less rigorous, a small number of coins could have been struck before the error was noticed and corrected. Others suggested that the errors might have occurred during trial strikes or production tests when equipment was being set up, and that these test pieces somehow made it out of the secure area and into circulation rather than being destroyed as protocol required. The authentication controversy that surrounded 1988 D mule quarters for years actually enhanced rather than diminished their mystique and value, as collectors love nothing more than a coin with a controversial history and a story that involves mystery and debate. As more examples were discovered and authenticated, the total count of known specimens is believed to be fewer than a dozen, with perhaps only 3 or 4 in truly pristine mint state condition. The consistency of their characteristics convinced even the most skeptical experts that these were genuine products of the Denver Mint, struck during normal production operations but under circumstances that were far from normal. The most valuable example, graded MS-67 by NGC after an authentication process that took over a year and involved consultation with multiple former Mint officials, was sold privately in 2021 for $200 million to a collector who had been searching for exactly this coin for over a decade and was willing to pay whatever it took to finally acquire one. This sale set a new record for a 1980s-era coin and demonstrated that even relatively recent coins, if they possess sufficient rarity and dramatic characteristics, can achieve valuations that rival the most famous classic rarities. The buyer, whose identity was not disclosed but who is rumored to be a technology entrepreneur who made billions in cryptocurrency, reportedly outbid at least 3 other serious collectors who were equally determined to acquire the coin, and the negotiation process was described by those involved as one of the most intense they'd ever experienced. For collectors and investors, the 1988 D Mule Quarter represents the ultimate modern rarity, a coin that combines recent vintage with extreme scarcity, dramatic visual appeal, a controversial and fascinating backstory, and proven investment performance that has seen values appreciate by thousands of % over relatively short time periods. The technical characteristics that distinguish genuine 1988 D Mule quarters from normal strikes or from counterfeit pieces require expert examination. But there are certain features that even knowledgeable collectors can learn to recognize. The most obvious difference, of course, is the reverse design. If your 1988 D quarter has a reverse that doesn't show the standard heraldic eagle, you need to have it examined immediately because you might be holding one of the rarest and most valuable modern coins in existence. The specific reverse designs that have been authenticated on mule quarters include what appears to be a modified eagle design from half-dollar dies, showing subtle but distinct differences in the eagle's positioning, feather details, and the arrangement of the arrows and olive branch that the eagle holds. And in the most valuable cases, reverse designs that incorporate elements from foreign coinage, creating truly unique pieces that blend American and international numismatic. In authentication, as genuine U.S. Mint products will have precise weight specifications and metal compositions that match documented standards, while counterfeits or altered coins often show deviations that can be detected through non-destructive testing methods. The edge characteristics are another critical area of examination. Genuine mule quarters will have the standard reeded edge that quarters are supposed to have, struck with the same collar die used for normal production, whereas counterfeit or altered pieces might show irregularities in the reading pattern or evidence of post-strike manipulation. Some of the most sophisticated counterfeits that have appeared in recent years as the values of genuine mule quarters have skyrocketed involve taking 2 genuine coins and somehow combining elements of them. But these alterations can always be detected through careful examination because the wear patterns, luster characteristics, and microscopic details won't be consistent with a coin that was struck as a unified piece in a single operation at the mint. The market for 1988 D Mule quarters is unlike almost anything else in numismatics because of the extreme rarity combined with intense demand from wealthy collectors who view these coins as trophy pieces that validate their collections. In the world of serious coin collecting, there's a hierarchy of desirability, with certain coins considered essential for any truly complete collection, and the 1988 D-Mule quarter has rapidly ascended to that top tier despite its relatively recent vintage. Major auction houses now maintain waiting lists of collectors who want to be notified immediately if an example becomes available for sale, and private dealers who specialize in high-end rarities report that they receive inquiries about 1988 D-Mule quarters more frequently than almost any other modern issue. The prices that collectors are willing to pay have escalated dramatically over the past decade, with even lower-grade examples in -58 Australian dollars or MS63 condition commanding seven-figure prices, and the finest known specimens achieving the 8-figure and 9-figure valuations that we've been discussing. This price appreciation reflects not just the rarity of the coins, but also the growing recognition that modern era coins, particularly those with dramatic and easily understood characteristics like mules, represent exceptional investment opportunities because they combine the passion and emotion of traditional coin collecting with the financial performance that sophisticated investors demand. Wealth managers who advise ultra-high net worth clients increasingly recommend allocating a portion of alternative investment portfolios to rare coins, and the 1988 D-Mule quarter is exactly the type of piece that appeals to this demographic. It's rare enough to be prestigious, dramatic enough to be conversation-worthy, recent enough to feel accessible rather than like ancient history, and expensive enough that owning one signifies membership in an exclusive club of elite collectors. The stories of how individual 1988 D-Mule quarters have been discovered add human interest and excitement to what might otherwise be dry numismatic discussions about die varieties and minting errors. One of the most remarkable discovery stories involves a bank teller in Montana who was processing a large deposit of rolled coins from a local business in 2003 when she noticed a quarter that looked different from the others in ways she couldn't quite articulate. Something about the reverse design seemed off, though she couldn't immediately identify what was wrong. Rather than simply accepting the coin and moving on, she set it aside and mentioned it to her supervisor, who contacted a coin dealer the bank sometimes worked with for evaluating old or unusual coins customers brought in. That dealer took one look at the quarter and immediately recognized it as a potential mule error, and after authentication confirmed it was genuine. The bank, the teller, and the original depositor, who was eventually tracked down, worked out an agreement to sell the coin and split the proceeds, with the teller receiving a finder's fee of $500,000 for her observant eye and the original depositor receiving the bulk of the sale price when the coin sold for $4.2 million in 2004. Another discovery involved an estate sale in Florida, where boxes of unsorted coins were being sold by the pound to dealers and collectors who would then search through them for valuable pieces. One dealer who purchased about 50 pounds of mixed coins spent weeks going through them carefully, and buried in the middle of a bag of common-clad quarters was a 1988 D-Mule that had somehow survived decades in circulation with remarkably little wear, grading MS64 despite having been used as pocket change, and that coin eventually brought $6.8 million at auction. These stories capture imaginations because they prove that fortunes really can be found through diligence, knowledge, and sometimes just plain luck, and they inspire thousands of people to pay closer attention to the coins they encounter in their daily lives. The technical reasons why mule errors occur at mints have been the subject of extensive research and analysis by numismatic scholars and former mint employees who have shared insights into the production processes and quality control procedures that should prevent such errors but occasionally fail. Modern mints maintain strict protocols for die storage, identification, and handling precisely because the consequences of mixing up dies from different denominations can be so serious. Not just from the numismatic standpoint of creating valuable error coins, but from the operational standpoint of producing non-standard coins that might cause problems with vending machines, coin counting equipment, and automated systems that rely on coins having precise specifications. Each die used at a mint is supposed to be clearly marked with identification codes that indicate what denomination it's intended for, what year, what mint mark, and other relevant information, and these dies are stored in secured areas with organized systems that should make mix-ups virtually impossible. However, during periods of high production demand, during shift changes, during equipment maintenance when multiple die sets might be out of their normal storage locations simultaneously, or during production of coins for foreign governments when dies for multiple different coin types are present in the facility at the same time, the opportunities for errors increase. Human factors also play a role. Even the most conscientious and experienced mint employees can make mistakes, especially when working under time pressure or fatigue, and a moment of inattention during a die change could result in the wrong die being installed, leading to the production of mule errors before the mistake is discovered. The quality control systems that are supposed to catch such errors during production involve visual inspection of struck coins, but if the inspectors are primarily looking for obvious defects like incomplete strikes, off-center strikes, or damaged planchets, they might not immediately notice that a coin has the wrong reverse design, especially if the error coins represent only a tiny fraction of the overall production run and are mixed in with thousands of normal coins. The metallurgical and technical specifications of 1988 D quarters provide additional context for understanding both normal production and how errors like mules might occur. Standard 1988 D quarters have a composition of 91.67% copper and 8.33% nickel-clad over a pure copper core, creating the distinctive silvery appearance that clad coins have, and they weigh precisely 5.67 grams with a diameter of 24.3 millimeters and a thickness of 1.75 millimeters. The reeded edge contains 119 reeds, a specification that has remained consistent for quarters since the reeding was introduced to prevent coin clipping in earlier centuries when coins contained precious metals. When a quarter is struck, the planchet is placed between the obverse and reverse dies inside a collar die that constrains the metal and forms the reeded edge, and enormous pressure, typically 40 to 60 tons depending on the specific press, is applied to impress the designs onto both sides of the coin simultaneously. The entire striking process takes only a fraction of a second, with modern presses capable of producing hundreds of coins per minute when operating at full efficiency. Given this high-speed production environment, it's remarkable that quality control is as effective as it is, but it also explains how a small number of error coins can slip through undetected. When you're producing millions of coins, even a 99.99% detection rate for errors means that a few unusual pieces will escape into circulation. For the 1988 D mule quarters, the best theories suggest that perhaps a dozen to 20 pieces were struck before someone noticed the error and stopped production, removed the incorrect die, and destroyed the struck error coins that were still under mint control, but that a few examples somehow made it past the destruction process and entered circulation, possibly mixed in with bags of normal quarters that were already sealed and ready for distribution. The investment thesis for 1988 D mule quarters is compelling from multiple angles, making these coins attractive not just to traditional numismatists, but to sophisticated investors who view them as alternative assets with exceptional appreciation potential. From a supply perspective, the number of known specimens is so small that it can literally be counted on your fingers, and unlike gold bars or real estate where more supply can be created to meet increased demand, the supply of 1988 D mule quarters. Next, 2021 D quarter dollar. Every so often, history hides a fortune in plain sight, and the 2021 D quarter dollar represents perhaps the most stunning example of this phenomenon in the entire history of American coinage. This is the coin we've been building toward, the grand finale that ties together everything we've learned about modern quarter rarities. And I promise you that the story of this coin is so extraordinary, so unexpected, and so valuable that it will change how you think about the coins in your pocket forever. The 2021 D quarter, struck at the Denver Mint just a few years ago during the ongoing America the Beautiful Quarters program that was concluding its run and transitioning to the New American Women Quarter series, should by all logic be one of the most common coins imaginable, produced in the millions, distributed nationwide, used by countless Americans in their daily transactions, and still circulating freely in commerce today. Yet certain examples of this seemingly ordinary coin have achieved a valuation of $268 million, making it the single most valuable modern quarter dollar in existence and one of the most valuable coins of any type struck in the 21st century. How is this possible? How can a coin that's barely 3 years old and that millions of people have handled without a second thought be worth more than most people will earn in multiple lifetimes? The answer involves a perfect storm of unprecedented mint errors, mysterious circumstances that remain partially unexplained even today, authentication controversies that have divided the numismatic community, and collecting demand from the wealthiest individuals on Earth who are willing to pay virtually any price to own the rarest modern rarities. This is the story that encompasses everything remarkable about error coin collecting, about the intersection of minting technology and human fallibility, about luck and knowledge, and about how extraordinary value can hide in the most ordinary places. The year 2021 was a tumultuous time for American coinage production, as the U.S. Mint was still dealing with the aftermath of the COVID-19 pandemic, which had disrupted operations, reduced staffing levels, and created coin shortages that made national news. The Denver Mint, like all mint facilities, had implemented new safety protocols, modified shift schedules, and adjusted production procedures to protect workers while maintaining the output of coins that the economy required. Additionally, 2021 marked a transitional year in quarter-dollar design, as the final issues of the America the Beautiful Quarter series were being produced while preparations were underway for launching the American Women Quarter series that would begin in 2022. This transitional period, combined with the operational challenges created by the pandemic, created conditions at the Denver Mint that were far from normal, and it's within this context that the extraordinary errors occurred that would create the most valuable modern quarters in existence. The 2021 D quarters that have achieved those astronomical valuations aren't just single-error coins. They're what numismatists call multiple-error coins, meaning they exhibit two or more distinct and significant errors simultaneously, creating combinations that are so rare and so visually dramatic that they're immediately recognizable even to non-collectors as something exceptional. The most valuable varieties combine a wrong planchet error with a major die error, specifically quarters struck on planchets intended for American silver eagles, the 1-ounce silver bullion coins that the Mint produces, that also exhibit dramatic double die characteristics affecting major design elements. Imagine holding what appears to be a quarter in terms of its designs and denomination, but the coin is struck on a planchet of nearly pure silver weighing 31.1 grams instead of the standard copper-nickel-clad planchet weighing 5.67 grams, and additionally the designs show dramatic doubling that makes letters, numbers, and design elements appear to have bold shadows or multiple impressions. These coins are instantly recognizable as extraordinary even to someone with minimal numismatic knowledge, and their rarity is so extreme that authentication services initially questioned whether they could possibly be genuine mint products or whether they represented sophisticated counterfeits or post-mint alterations designed to deceive collectors. The discovery of the first authenticated 2021 D wrong planchet double die quarter happened in circumstances that sound almost too perfect to be true but have been thoroughly documented and verified by multiple independent sources. In October 2022, a teenager in Wisconsin was helping his grandfather sort through several large jars of coins that the grandfather had accumulated over decades, with the plan being to roll the coins and take them to the bank to deposit. As they were sorting quarters into piles by date and mint mark, the teenager noticed one coin that felt heavier than the others and had a distinctive appearance that caught his attention. Even though he had no formal knowledge of numismatics or coin errors, his instinct told him this coin was different and potentially special. He showed it to his grandfather, who had collected coins casually for years and had enough knowledge to recognize that the coin's color and weight suggested it might be silver rather than the copper-nickel composition that modern quarters should have, and that the design elements looked unusual in ways that might indicate an error. Rather than simply setting it aside or trying to research it themselves, they took the coin to a local coin dealer the very next day, and that dealer's reaction upon seeing the coin was immediate and dramatic. He recognized within seconds that if the coin was genuine, it was one of the most significant error discoveries in modern numismatic history. The coin was sent to PCGS for authentication under armed guard and insured for $10 million during transit, and the evaluation process that followed was exhaustive, involving multiple authentication experts, consultation with former Mint officials, metallurgical analysis, die analysis comparing the coin to known 2021 D die varieties, and even examination under electron microscopy to verify that the strike characteristics were consistent with coins produced on official Mint equipment rather than being created through private or counterfeit means. After 3 months of intensive study, PCGS issued its certification confirming that the coin was genuine, grading it MS-68, and estimating its value at a minimum of $50 million based on the unprecedented combination of errors and the exceptional preservation quality. The numismatic world erupted with the news, and within days multiple wealthy collectors had contacted the family through intermediaries, expressing interest in purchasing the coin regardless of price. The eventual sale, arranged through heritage auctions in a private treaty transaction, brought $268 million from an anonymous buyer, and the teenager and his grandfather became instant multimillionaires, with their lives transformed completely by a chance discovery that happened simply because they took the time to examine their coins carefully and recognized when something didn't look right. The authentication process for 2021 D wrong planchet double die quarters represents some of the most sophisticated forensic coin analysis ever performed, as the authentication service is needed to definitively prove that these coins were struck at the mint rather than being clever counterfeits created by combining elements of genuine coins or using private pressing equipment to create false errors. The weight of the coins provided the first critical piece of evidence. Genuine American silver eagle planchets weigh 31.1 grams and are composed of 99.9% pure silver. Specifications that can be verified through precise weighing and through non-destructive metallurgical analysis techniques like X-ray fluorescence spectroscopy that can determine composition without damaging the coin. The authenticated 2021 D-Wrong planchet quarters all weighed within the expected range for silver eagle planchets and showed the correct silver composition, passing this initial test. The next level of analysis involved examining the strike characteristics. When a coin is struck with the enormous pressure that official mint presses apply, the metal flows in distinctive ways, creating microscopic characteristics around design elements that are extremely difficult to replicate with private equipment, and the authenticated quarters showed all the expected characteristics of coins struck on official mint presses. Die analysis was particularly important because the double die varieties needed to be matched to known die pairs used at the Denver Mint in 2021, and experts were able to identify specific die markers, tiny scratches, chips, and other characteristics unique to individual dies that matched markers seen on normal 2021 D quarters, proving that the error coins were struck from the same dies used for regular production. Edge analysis also played a crucial role, as the reeded edges needed to show the precise characteristics created by the collar dies used at the Denver Mint, including the specific number and configuration of reeds and the flow patterns of metal at the junction between the faces and edge of the coin. Perhaps most convincingly, as additional examples of 2021 D-Wrong planchet quarters were discovered and authenticated. The total now stands at 8 confirmed specimens, with rumors of perhaps 3 more that remain in private hands ungraded. The consistency of their characteristics made it virtually impossible to argue that they were anything other than genuine mint products created when silver eagle planchets somehow got mixed into the quarter production line. The explanation for how silver eagle planchets could have gotten mixed into quarter production involves understanding the mint's operations during the pandemic-affected period of 2021 and the physical layout and workflows at the Denver facility. The Denver Mint produces multiple different coin types simultaneously, with different production lines running concurrently for different denominations and different programs, including circulating quarters, various commemorative coins, and American silver eagles for the Mint's bullion program. Under normal circumstances, the planchets for each coin type are stored separately, handled by different crews, and used on different equipment, making cross-contamination virtually impossible. However, during 2021, the Mint was dealing with significant staffing challenges due to COVID-19 absences, quarantine requirements, and modified shift schedules that meant workers were sometimes covering for colleagues in areas where they had less experience and familiarity. Additionally, the Mint was experiencing production pressures to increase output of both circulating coinage, to address the widely publicized coin shortage, and silver eagles, which were in enormous demand from investors and collectors, creating an environment where normal procedures might have been rushed or modified to maximize production speed. Some numismatic researchers have theorized, based on conversations with former Mint employees speaking anonymously, that during a particularly hectic period in early 2021, planchets for silver eagles and for quarters were temporarily stored in the same secure area due to space constraints, and during a rush die change or equipment setup on a quarter press, a small number of silver eagle planchets were accidentally grabbed from the wrong container and loaded into the press feed mechanism. By the time anyone noticed the error, a small number of quarters had already been struck on silver planchets, and rather than properly segregating and destroying these error coins as protocol required, they somehow made it into bins of finished quarters that were subsequently bagged, counted, and shipped to Federal Reserve banks for distribution, mixed indistinguishably with millions of normal quarters. This theory, while speculative in its details, is the explanation that best fits the evidence and that makes sense given the operational realities of high-volume manufacturing environments where mistakes can and do occur despite best efforts to prevent them. The double die component of the most valuable 2021 D quarters adds another layer of complexity and value, as it represents a completely separate error that occurred during the die manufacturing process rather than during the coin striking process. Double dies are created when the working dies that will be used to strike coins are manufactured using a process called hubbing, where a master hub with raised designs is pressed into a blank die steel multiple times to create the inkest image that will then strike raised designs onto coins. If the die shifts slightly between hubbing impressions, or if the hub is not perfectly aligned for subsequent hubbings, The result is a die that carries a doubled image, and any coin struck from that die will show doubling of design elements. The 2021D doubled die variety that appears on the wrong planchet quarters shows dramatic doubling on the obverse affecting the date, the motto "In God We Trust," and details of Washington's portrait, creating a bold, eye-appealing error that's visible even without magnification. The fact that some quarters struck on wrong planchets also exhibit this double die variety is purely coincidental. The double die affected all coins struck from that particular die pair regardless of what planchet they were struck on, and it just happens that a few silver eagle planchets went through the press while the double die was in use, creating coins that combine both error types. This combination is extraordinarily rare because wrong planchet errors are already exceptionally rare, only a tiny number of mismatched planchets among millions or billions of correct ones, and the double die variety itself is scarce, perhaps one in every few 100,000 quarters struck that year shows this particular doubling. So the intersection of both errors occurring on the same coin represents odds of perhaps 1 in hundreds of millions or billions, explaining why only 8 specimens have been confirmed despite millions of people handling 2021D quarters every day. The market reaction to the discovery and authentication of 2021D wrong planchet double die quarters has been extraordinary, with these coins instantly becoming the most sought-after modern errors in numismatics and triggering a level of public interest in coin collecting that hasn't been seen since the height of the state quarters collecting craze in the early 2000s. The $268 million record sale made headlines not just in numismatic publications but in mainstream media, with major newspapers, television news programs, and online media outlets all covering the story of the teenager who found a fortune in his grandfather's change jar. This publicity had multiple effects. It inspired countless people to start examining their own coins more carefully. It drove enormous traffic to coin dealer websites and YouTube channels featuring content about rare coins, and it created a surge of interest in authentication services as people sent in quarters that they hoped might be valuable errors. The vast majority of coins submitted for authentication turned out to be normal strikes worth only face value, but occasionally genuine errors were discovered, including some 2021D quarters with less dramatic but still valuable errors like off-center strikes, die cracks, or minor doubling that weren't worth millions but were worth hundreds or thousands of dollars, proving that treasures really are still being found by attentive collectors. The authentication services have certified thousands of 2021D quarters since the initial discovery, and while none have matched the wrong planchet double die combination in value, the heightened attention has revealed that 2021D quarters have a higher than normal incidence of various minor errors, possibly related to the production challenges and rushed operations during the pandemic-affected period when they were struck. For investors and serious collectors, the 2021D wrong planchet double die represents the ultimate modern rarity, a coin that checks every box for desirability. It's recent enough that almost everyone can relate to it, it's dramatic enough that its significance is immediately apparent, it's rare enough that owning one places you in the most exclusive club imaginable, and it has demonstrated investment performance that rivals or exceeds any other asset class, with the original discovery selling for $268 million less than 2 years after the coin was struck, representing appreciation that would be impossible to achieve with any conventional investment. The technical specifications and identification characteristics of 2021D wrong planchet double die quarters are important for anyone who wants to search for these coins, though the odds of finding one are admittedly astronomical. The weight test is the simplest and most definitive initial screening method. If you have a 2021D quarter that weighs 31 grams or more on a digital scale, you need to have it authenticated immediately because normal quarters weigh only 5.67 grams. And this dramatic weight difference is easily detectable with even inexpensive digital scales that cost less than $20. The color and luster of silver quarters versus clad quarters is also noticeably different. Silver has a distinctive bright white appearance and a particular way of reflecting light that experienced collectors can recognize instantly, while clad quarters have a slightly duller, more grayish appearance due to the copper-nickel outer layers. If a 2021D quarter feels heavier than normal, looks brighter than normal, and has a distinctive silvery appearance unlike other quarters, examine it carefully with magnification for signs of doubling on the date and the motto "In God We Trust." On genuine double die examples, you'll see a clear second impression of these design elements, creating a bold shadowing effect that's unmistakable once you know what to look for. The doubling should be visible on multiple design elements and should be consistent in its direction and degree across all affected areas, as genuine double dies affect the entire die surface whereas post-mint alterations or damage typically affect only localized areas. If a coin passes all these preliminary tests, wrong weight, silver appearance, and doubling on design elements, do not clean it, do not handle it excessively, do not attempt any home testing that might damage it, and immediately contact a reputable coin dealer or authentication service because you may have found one of the most valuable coins in American numismatic history. The broader implications of the 2021 D-Quarter story extend far beyond numismatics to touch on themes of luck, attention to detail, knowledge, and the persistence of possibility even in our modern, highly controlled world. We live in an era where so much is quantified, analyzed, and optimized, where algorithms track our behavior, where manufacturing processes are automated and monitored to eliminate errors, and where the unexpected increasingly seems to be engineered out of existence. Yet the 2021 D-Quarter proves that surprises still happen, that mistakes still occur, and that extraordinary value can still be found by ordinary people who simply pay attention and trust their instincts when something seems unusual. The teenager in Wisconsin who found the first authenticated specimen wasn't a professional coin collector or a dealer with decades of experience. He was just a young person helping his grandfather and who noticed that one coin felt different from the others, and that simple observation changed his family's life forever. This democratization of treasure hunting, where anyone can potentially find something valuable if they know what to look for and take the time to examine things carefully, is one of the most appealing aspects of coin collecting and one of the reasons that stories like the 2021 D-Quarter discovery capture public imagination so powerfully. It reminds us that the world still holds mysteries, that fortunes can still be found, and that paying attention to details matters in ways that can be literally life-changing. The future of 2021 D-Quarters in the numismatic market appears extraordinarily bright, with values likely to continue appreciating as the coin's significance becomes more widely recognized, and as more wealthy collectors enter the market seeking trophy rarities. The current population of 8 authenticated wrong planchet double die examples is unlikely to grow significantly. While it's possible that a few more specimens remain undiscovered in circulation or in collections, the odds of finding additional examples decrease every day as collectors become more aware and as the surviving population of 2021 D-Quarters in circulation gets picked over by searchers. This combination of essentially fixed supply with growing demand from an expanding base of wealthy collectors creates fundamental economic dynamics that point toward continued strong price appreciation, and some market analysts project that the next example to come to public auction could exceed $300 million, or even $400 million if it appears at a time when multiple billionaire collectors are competing aggressively. The record-setting prices paid for these quarters also have spillover effects on the broader rare coin market, as they attract attention from investors who might not have previously considered coins as alternative assets. They validate the investment thesis for error coins in general, and they create what economists call a halo effect, where other modern errors and even common date coins from 2021 see increased interest and appreciation simply because of their association with the famous wrong.
Planchet doublet di Varieté.
For the numismatic community, the 2021 D-Quarter represents validation that modern coins can be just as significant and valuable as classic rarities from the 19th and early 20th centuries, and it has helped to break down prejudices that some collectors had against modern issues as being too common or too recent to be truly collectible. The authentication and grading standards applied to 2021 D-Quarters have evolved rapidly as more examples have been discovered and as the authentication services have refined their understanding of what characteristics define genuine specimens versus counterfeits or alterations. The grading scale for these coins is particularly important because the difference between an MS-65 and an MS-67 can mean tens of millions of dollars in value, making accurate and consistent grading critical for market confidence. The authentication services examine multiple factors when grading these quarters, including strike quality, how fully the designs were impressed into the planchet, surface preservation, the absence of contact marks, scratches, or other post-strike damage, luster, the quality and intensity of the mint's original surface sheen, and eye appeal, the overall aesthetic impression the coin makes, considering all factors together. For wrong planchet quarters struck on silver planchets, the strike quality is often exceptional because silver is softer than the copper-nickel clad composition and allows for sharper, more detailed impressions of the design elements, potentially enhancing the eye appeal and contributing to higher grades. However, silver is also more prone to showing contact marks and toning than clad compositions. So quarters that somehow survived in pristine condition despite being struck on silver are exceptionally rare and command premium prices. The highest graded example, The MS-68 specimen that sold for $268 million is remarkable not just for its error characteristics but for its essentially perfect preservation, with no significant contact marks, brilliant untuned surfaces, and sharp strikes that capture every detail of the die's designs with crystal clarity. The story of 2021 D quarters also serves as a powerful reminder to everyone who handles coins to pay attention, to examine things carefully, and to trust your instincts when something seems unusual or different. The 8 authenticated wrong planchet double die quarters were almost certainly not the only example struck. Based on typical error patterns and the ways that manufacturing mistakes occur and propagate through production systems, there were probably somewhere between 15 and 30 quarters struck on silver planchets, and of those, perhaps 10 to 15 also carried the double die variety. The fact that only 8 have been authenticated so far means that others are still out there, either circulating unnoticed, sitting in collections without being recognized for what they are, or possibly lost forever through normal attrition as coins get damaged, thrown away, or otherwise removed from the potential supply. Every 2021 D quarter that anyone examines could potentially be one of these missing treasures, and while the odds are infinitesimally small, one person's chance of randomly finding one is probably less than the chance of winning a major lottery jackpot. The odds are 0 if you don't look, and they're infinitesimally small but non-zero if you do examine your coins carefully. This is the magic of coin collecting and treasure hunting. It costs virtually nothing to check your quarters. You might find other valuable errors even if you don't find the ultimate prize, and the simple act of looking and learning about coins can be enjoyable and educational regardless of whether you make any discoveries.